Incident. One day, Seryozha had an amazing experience. He was playing in the yard with some friends, and when he got drunk, he got thirsty. And since he lived on the first floor and didn't have to climb the boring stairs, he decided that he would do everything quickly, and the friends would not have time to disperse. He flew into the entrance and, almost without slowing down, opened the door to the apartment. What he saw surprised him. Amazing things often happened in his life, but all of them were also pleasant, and this event seemed rather frightening. His mother was sitting in the room. It was only later that he realized that Tam Bela, his mother, was there, and at first he would never have believed it. At first he was even afraid. Mama sat on a stool, straight and motionless in the chair. Her hands were folded in her lap. Her appearance was both striking and utterly expressionless. There wasn't a single line on it. A blank oval face without eyes, mouth, nose, or anything else, smooth as an egg. The body, without clothes, was smooth, not a single bulge, not a single vein. Even the mannequins that Serge had seen in the store had at least some features, even if they were barely noticeable. This body didn't have them at all. It looked more like a pale gray Zadami board that would then be used to carve or melt whatever was needed. Next to Mom was a pile of some kind of pink fabric, among which you could guess my mother's favorite dress. The guard sat motionless for a few seconds. Then she started up, got up, and immediately put on a strange cloth, instantly turning into her mother. She was smiling, affectionately and a little shyly. "Hey, honey, have you taken a walk yet?" Seryozha finally plucked up the courage and answered, "Not yet. I just came in for a drink." My mother ran to the kitchen with her usual fuss and returned a few seconds later with a glass in her hands. "Here you go." She smiled again, and this time it seemed perfectly normal to Seryozha. As he went out into the street, he thought he must have imagined it. After all, my mother couldn't just jump out of her skin like that. A few days passed, and Seryozha almost completely forgot the incident, because he forgot everything incomprehensible and unpleasant very quickly. My mother behaved as usual, and certainly did not take off her skin with all her features. But one fine evening, Seryozha, playing hide-and-seek with friends, ran behind the transformer booth and saw a tramp and drunk Uncle Petya. It was he who later realized that Uncle Petya was there, and then he saw only a pale gray blank for a mannequin, exactly the same as his mother. Well, except that he was shorter, and next to it a pile of dirty pink and black cloth. Once again, the blank, realizing that Seryozha was looking at her, quickly put on her skin and clothes and turned into Uncle Petya, dirty and swollen. Uncle Petya immediately snapped angrily at Seryozha, as he usually did. From that day on, Seryozha decided that something strange was happening. Either he had gone mad, although this thought in itself seemed crazy to him, because Seryozha did not feel like a psycho, or something was happening to people who, when no one was around, threw off their clothes, skin and faces for something. Well, if the first option was not available, then it means that it was necessary to find out more precisely what exactly is happening. Seryozha was an inquisitive and persistent boy. For a whole week, he picked, watched and watched surreptitiously on parents, on brother, on friends and on parents of friends. He found out that all adults, without exception, could do this, except perhaps the local fool. Everyone called him Stupid Misha, who, although he was already a full 35 years old, was more like a child. Seryozha's brother also knew how to do this, and did it very often. With friends, it was a little different. Vitya, Pashka, and that nasty new guy, Gosha, could. Yurka and small Olezhek could not and did not do this. And, what is most offensive, his best friend Kostian could throw off his face and not say a word about it to Seryozha, and even called the best friend. It turned out that almost everyone had this amazing talent. Seryozha really wanted to talk to someone about it, but I couldn't discuss it with my friends, who couldn't take their faces off. They laugh, and it was also dangerous to talk to those who could throw off their faces, because Seryozha was not completely sure that all this was not a figment of his imagination. He needed someone who didn't know him, but who could shed some light on his amazing, if completely incomprehensible, abilities. And after a couple of days, Seryozha realized who to go to. In the center of the town, in the shopping aisles, there was a small shop. Children's toys were sold there, but they were so battered, worn, and out of date that Seryozha wondered why the store was needed at all. Even his mother, who didn't know anything about toys, agreed with him on this. The owner of this shop was an old grandfather. It was said that he was all alone and that his wife and child had died a long time ago. And for as long as Seryozha could remember, he had always seen this old man dozing on a chair in the dusty window of the shop. For some reason, Seryozha thought that this grandfather was very smart, that he would be able to answer the boy's question, and if he couldn't, then it wasn't scary either, because the old man didn't know Seryozha, and therefore wouldn't tell anyone about him. Seryozha did not dare to go to the old man for a long time, but one day it turned out that his mother went to the barber shop next door and asked him to take a walk for half an hour while she was doing Francesco. And Seryozha made up his mind. He opened the door of the shop and stepped into a small, light-filled room. On the makeshift shelves, he saw a bunch of toys: tanks, soldiers, constructors, cars. Everything was so old and uninteresting that Seryozha didn't even bother to look at it. He saw an old man in faded trousers and a funny red and white plaid shirt, and said hello, just as Mama had taught him. The old man bowed slightly and said hello to Seryozha. There was a slight pause. Seryozha did not dare to start a strange conversation, and Grandpa was silent, slightly narrowing his eyes. Then he asked Seryozha if there was anything he wanted to ask him. Seryozha, glad that the old man had started for him, blurted out everything at once. The old man paused. "You're a brave boy." Seryozha nodded, pleased to be praised. "Do you know what indifference is?" Seryozha shook his head. He'd heard the word often, but he wasn't sure what it meant. Indifference is when everything becomes the same for you, and you yourself become the same with everything. You remove your face to erase these differences in yourself and immediately realize that if everyone else removes their faces, then each of them will be the same for you. Each soul will be equal to any other, and the result will be a complete ravnodushие. The old man paused, choosing his words. Then he continued, looking for some reason not at Seryozha, but at the shelf with the soldiers. "I had a son. He was as quick and curious as you are. I loved him very much. Both died. If you imagine that his soul is not equal to other souls, then it may seem that because of his death you should stanovit feel pain and bitterness. But if you know that his soul is equal to any other, for example, the soul of an executed murderer, then it turns out that there is no reason to suffer at all. What do we care about a faceless, unknown criminal?" Seryozha tried to catch what the old man was saying. But he didn't understand much. Pain is an unpleasant thing, isn't it? Seryozha nodded automatically. Exactly. So the absence of pain is a very pleasant thing, right? Seryozha nodded again. So to get rid of pain, a person needs to learn to understand that he and everyone else are equal in soul. That is, equal in soul. But only understanding is not enough. After all, if you say that the candy is delicious, you will doubt it until you try it yourself and make sure that it really tastes good. It turns out that doubts will go away when you yourself become equal in soul with everyone else. So, Seryozha nodded for the third time, obviously missing the thread of the old man's reasoning. So, that's exactly what you need to do. Become equal to everyone's soul. Become equal to everyone's soul. And that's exactly what people do. They take off their mournful faces, throw off this meaningless ballast, erase their differences, so that they do not see these very differences in others. And if everyone became non-different individuals, then there would be general prosperity. The old man chuckled amiably. It's a pity that you kids are born without knowing the truth and not having this talent. But children learn some earlier, some later. Your friend, what's his name? Kostya. Yeah, your friend Kostya has already learned how to do this, and so will you. The old man paused. Have I answered your question, brave boy? Seryozha, not knowing whether he had received an answer or not, nodded in silence. After leaving the store, he looked around in confusion, not really realizing where he was. The old man's incomprehensible speech completely confused him. Then he looked back and wasn't surprised to see Dummy Blank sitting in the window of a store with all children's toys, her hands folded in her lap, next to a pile that revealed the old man's red and white checked shirt. On the way, holding his mother's hand, Seryozha mentally tried to play with the two words he had heard from the old man, indifference and indifference. He put the words in parts, just like Grandpa did, and changed the syllables. It made no sense, just like the old man's entire speech. The only thing that happened was to combine the two words so that it turned out soulless. Or as the old man might have pronounced it, бездушие. Yes, that's right, lovingly praising each syllable. The next day, Seryozha tried to remove his face for the first time. It didn't last very long, and he felt bad afterward, as if he'd done something forbidden. He was ashamed. But the shame soon passed, and the next day it turned out better. Each time, he became more adept at taking off his face and less ashamed. It was only necessary to start, and then it was easier and easier. 11.1 2016 14.1 2016